Relict plants, also called archaeophytes. Definition by Nordgen, the Nordic Gene Bank. Plants that were once but are no longer cultivated in a certain area and where a part of the population still exists even though it is no longer actively maintained. Time restriction. Finnish relict plants are plants that came to Finland before the 17th century and were brought here by the activities of human, for example, shipping or trading. Plants have arrived from other Nordic countries but also brought here from other places. They are both wild and cultivated species among relict plants. It is difficult to say if a plant is a heritage variety or if it's a relict plant. It can be both. A relict plant can also be a plant that used to grow here but not grow anymore, for example due to climate change. Such a plant is Trapanatans. On maps in certain areas in southeastern Finland, we can, for example, see the name Elmis. And this is an old name for Trapanatans. And in this one local municipality here, I have found it in several locations. But this plant is not growing here anymore. What kind of plants can be relict plants? Many old weeds belong to relict plants. They have been brought either by purpose or by accident to the country. For example, the seeds could get stuck in the wool if wool was imported. Relict plants in Finland are wheat, apple and cornflower. Relict plants can be medicinal plants, spices, food plants, poison plants, decorative plants, scent plants, and technical plants such as plants used in coloring. Relict plants were usually first cultivated in gardens, and some of them became afterwards wild in our nature. For example, Igopodium podagraria and Campanula rapunculoides. Plants that distribute easily: Arcticum lappa, Malva sylvestris, and Chicory intubus. You can see some photo from Estonian Open Air Museum where they are growing cicoria. So the first year it only grows this root, and the second year it's flowering and gives seeds. Cicoria was produced and used instead of coffee. So first it was dried, then it was roasted, and then it was packaged in bags and then exported. And these pictures are all from Estonia, where they produced cicoria root as coffee surrogate, and it was exported to Finland. Some populations get isolated from same species other populations. These are interesting as they may be genetically different. Some plants are common here but rare in other places. For example, in Norway, Tanaketum vulgare and Carum carvi are common but very rare at Faroe Islands. There are also rare plants that are bound to a place. Some of them are long-lasting perennials, such as Leonurus cardiaca, Balota nigra, Narcissus, the yellow one, Ornithogalum nutans, and Lecoium vernum. It's the plant in the right up corner, a decorative spring plant. So these are very long-lasting in their growing places. Then some plants, they are not being spread by seeds, they spread only via root systems. Acorus calamus. Then there is Armorachia rusticana, which is used as a kind of herb. And then Petacites hybridus, and that's in the right down corner, that plant. It was used also for medicinal purposes. Some plants are rare plants bound to a place. They may have long living seeds. Such are Conium maculatum, Verbascum tafus, Papaver somniferum, and Hyosquamus niger. Of course, the trees are also bound to a place. They are not moving around. There is the sour cherry, and then there is Prunus domestica incititatia, and types of roses and berberis. And let's have a quick look at these plants. So here we have this verbascum, and here we have this Hyoscamus niger, which is very poisoned, and it is popping up if you are making some soil work. You are perhaps making some constructions, and suddenly it is just there. Then Leonurus cardiaca, which is an herb used for heart diseases. And Papaver somniferum, Fumaria officinalis. And then there are those who are annual, with a very short living time. And those are, of course, then harder to find. How can I then recognize a relict plant? It is difficult and tricky to recognize it. One must judge the probability. One must investigate the plant, the growing place, other plants at the same spot, historical facts, and archaeologic facts, if there are some. Was this plant at that time already in the Nordic and Baltic countries? Is there a probability that the plant have been able to survive in that location for such a long time? Is it a perennial plant, a plant with long-lasting seeds, or an annual or biannual plant? What is the history of the location? Is there any historical facts about the location, any documentation of the plant, or is the location isolated? Very seldom there is documented facts about plants. Is there a good reason to think that the plant came here later? Is it possible to carry out a DNA research on the plant? If there grows many old plants and the history of the location is documented, then the probability that the plant is relict is high. Let's have a look at hop, a good indicator plant. Hop, Humulus lupulus, was used as a medicine plant and in making beer. The beer taste, the foam, the scent and durability is due to the hop. It is known that hop was cultivated in Germany in the region Hallertau the year 736, so very early. In 1490s, hop was exported from Narva to Sweden, that we know. In September month in 1507, Svante Nilsson's wife, Metta Ivarsdotter Dyre, write that in Riga and Reval there are very much salt and hop, but in Stockholm castle there is neither hop nor meat. It's a study on the development of plants species, the species richnesses in archaeophytes and in native plants. And you can see here that most of on this archaeophyte map that this evaluation, it means how high up you are going, then and the species richness here you can see. So there is a different pattern for archaeophytes and for native plants. Who brought then the plants here? Traders in ancient time, Vikings perhaps, up till the year 1000, from Sweden, Baltics, Russia, Germany. Maybe the Crusades brought it to the Baltic countries. Several wars where local soldiers participated in. For example, from Finland, soldiers participated in the Swedish war in Germany, and during that time Finland was a part of Sweden, so also soldiers for Finland went down to the continent for fighting. They were trade travelers to other countries. Russians' influence have been mainly after 1700, whereas then German, Dutch influence in the Baltic, it has been after 1990s. The German influence was, of course, also in the 19th century and before that. For example, we know that Hysocamus niger, the very poison plant we saw earlier, was brought to Denmark during the Viking Age. And Argopodium podagraria, it has came there during the Roman Iron Age, because there have been found seeds in the archaeological excavations. If you start then to check from where did perhaps the plants come into our countries, we could, for example, look at the Viking trade routes in Europe. And here we can then see which were the routes, and probably also many plants were traveling these same routes because it was easy to put some seeds in the pocket. Here in Northern Europe we had the Hansa Trade Union, and you can see all these colored areas here were the areas that were parts in this trade union, and ships were then traveling between these places, and of course with these ships also plants were distributed. Where do we then find the relict plants? There should be two circumstances fulfilled. One assumption: the human has brought the plant to the place they grow in now. So either cultivation or use, most likely. The plant has been able to survive in the same location up till today. That's the other circumstances we have to assume. And let's have a look then. There are castles, monasteries and convents. In them we could find medical plants perhaps. Churches and their related buildings could also be a place to find relic plants. Old farms may have food plants, old relic food plants. Old towns may also have old type of relic plants, and then harbors may have technical plants. Let's have a look then here on different convents and monasteries. In Finland we don't have that many. Viipuri here on the Russian side used to be a Finnish city, and there are some, but we cannot have access to them now. Then we can see that the longest period one have been here in Naantali. It's north of Turku, very close to Turku, 151 years. And then in Rauma, also north of Turku, here then nearly 100 years. And out on Cherkor Islands for 69 years. So these monasteries, they were cultivating plants, and there is a chance then in those areas to perhaps find some relic plants. Estonian monasteries and convents are then much older, the oldest being here from 1228 in Kärkna, but many of them have not been so long lasting again. But there are then really many possibilities where plants could have been distributed. So still we think a little bit about where to find the plants then. So the place, it must be hard to reach it, for example. It could be a hillside or close to a stone fence or close to a ruin, some marginal areas where people have not been really dealing with those areas that much, or it could be also roadsides. It could be locations where pasturing and other care has not been that intensive. It could be because these relic plants, they die out if the care for the area changes too much. Examples from Finland are Rapulanharju and Sääksmäki, where perhaps you could find plants. How should we take care of the locations if a rare relic plant grows there? Relic plants are living, ancient memories telling stories in the same way as an old building or painting. Relic plants were used for food, medicine, and technical purposes. They may have characteristics that are important today. Their protection is actually a part of the Rio Biodiversity Agreement. It is important with information to save them in the same location, and it would be good to make a management plan for them. The right time of cutting the hay is important, as is it also to not use pesticides in that area. Seeds should be collected and put in a gene bank. Let them grow where they have been growing for hundreds of years. Do not clean up too much. Do not take away too much weeds. Make a balance between managed and not managed areas at, for example, the graveyard. You can direct visitors by cutting corridors in the grass and let other areas be uncut. For example, if you do not want people to come too close, a ruined wall or a stone fence where these plants grow. How should we then put up the management plan? 1. Make a biological inventory of the plants at the location. 2. The plan can manage plant growing in the location or make possibilities for relic plants to grow in the location. 3. Make a new plant inventory after some years. 4. Take away aggressive invasive plants. 5. Preserve all trees. 6. Make cut and not cut areas. So you have less to cut if some areas don't need to be cut. 7. Make side road or protection areas close to stone fences or ruined walls. 8. Border areas to the south can have favorable microclimate that plants from the south prefer. 9. Check the width of uncut areas are in harmony with, for example, the width and the height of the stone wall and the fence. If the ruin is higher, then the uncut area can also be bigger. 10. Take away not wanted bushes, or if some common plants start to spread a lot. Do not use pesticides or use it close to the relic plant growing areas. Do not take away plants or soil on a stone wall. They bind and make the wall more stable. Let plants grow freely at walls, stone walls, and at their sides. You can take away bushes and trees growing too close to them. If you have to renovate the wall, then put always back the soil on it after the renovation. The soil may have a seed bank. If you have to add new soil, then take soil close from the wall. If the stone wall is filled with soil, then put it also back after the renovation. There may grow rare plants on walls. For example, in Hammerhus at Bornholm Island in Denmark, there was growing Asplenium adiantum nigrum. A diverse management gives good quality. Sheep too often graze too hard. Use a triangular shaped sharp iron tool when cutting, as it cuts as a scythe. Let the grass be on the soil for some weeks so that the seed can ripe and fall on ground. Gather the grass together and take it away from the area. When you take away the hay, there may be less nutrients in the soil, and this will also lower the risk that invasive plants will start to grow. Sleeping seeds can start to grow again. If you touch the soil, then seeds in the soil seed bank can start to grow again. Archaeological excavations and restorations can bring old seeds to grow again. These are, for example, Verbascum, Hyoscamus niger, Leonurus cardica, and Papaver somniferum and Fumaria officinalis. You can put the soil in a bench. Most plants manage in half shadow. Water it if needed and follow the soil for at least 2 years because some plants may be biennial. Especially there is a good reason to follow the soil in connection with archaeological excavations. Soil should be put back in the same place from where it was taken. New plants for an old place. One should always think very carefully when one wants to plant new plants in an old place. Is there any list of old plants that used to grow at that location? Many times not. Make an inventory of the plants at the location. All plants planted should be documented. So write down what you have been planting. Spread plants that grow already at the place. Favor local trees and bushes. And do not plant plants from other places. Many times if you have an old castle or an old manor or an estate, it may be that in that location there are not any old plants anymore left, but in nearby farms there may be, because plants have always been traveling from one place to another, and usually you can find the old plants then perhaps on the surrounding neighboring places, neighboring farms survived. In the end here I will be telling you a nice history from Bornholm, the island of Bornholm outside Denmark, belongs to Denmark, this island, and there is an old castle, Hammerhus. And already now, some years ago, there was a young, enthusiastic boy, and I think he was just in gymnasium when he started to get very interested in plants. And there was archaeological excavations in the castle, and the archaeologist took out all the soil and just dumped it. But this young boy, he started to look what will grow from that soil. And actually he found then a lot of rare plants that were not growing any places nearby. So most likely they were in the soil and they started to grow from there. After this, his interest grew and he mapped both church yards and also farms and also old harbors. And he managed to find really a lot of old relict plants. If you have a stone wall, then it's a good idea to just dig it up the soil on the southern side of the stone wall, because many plant seeds may have been flying in the air and they're just coming down because the stone wall is taking them down. And if you just start to care for the soil, so you play that this is now my nice ornamental garden and you water it, you take away all kinds of weeds that you can see that this is clearly a weed, and then maybe you will be managing to get into live some of the seeds of some relict plants that are in the soil.